So welcome back again. In this lesson, we're going to talk about a feature of programming for iOS, which is called categories, and it's specific to Objective-C. Categories are a way for us to add functionalities and add new methods to existing classes. Let's see how we could do that. Before I actually go to Xcode and try to make an app that explains categories, I want to show you that you somehow have been seeing categories all along the way. I'm going to make an app that's going to be a temporary app. You don't have to make this. It's going to be a single view application in Objective-C, and I'm going to call it temp app. And if you remember, whenever we make one of these applications in Objective-C, we immediately end up seeing something like this: at interface view controller and no name in there. And sometime in the past, I probably told you this is called a private category. And that's exactly what it is. It's a private category that helps us put private stuff in here. Things that we don't want our .h to have it, at interface to have it, so it cannot be exposed to other classes. As you can imagine, any class that imports this one, view controller, will have access to whatever which is here, which is in our .h. So we use this one as some sort of a private place for declaring different stuff that we don't want anyone else to essentially having access to them, or we don't want them to be exposed outside. So that's kind of how you declare and use a category. Now let's go ahead and see how we will do it in a much simpler way. I'm going to go to Xcode, say File, New Project. It's going to be a command line tool in macOS. And I'm going to call this one Categories Tool. All right, Categories Tool. The only thing is it has to be Objective-C, of course. I'm going to add it in here. Here's what I want to do. I want to go to my .m, my main file. I want to have a string. Let's say that is this string, hello world. All right, it is ns string, and it is called hello str. And that is this one. And I want to have a way to reverse it. So essentially say RTSOLLEH. But I don't want to have a function in here, and I don't want to have it as a separate class, simply because I want the NS string to be able to do that. Very much like the way that you could say hello str, a string by appending a string, which is a function built into an string. I want to make it like that, simply because this is a function that I'm going to be using on and on. Of course, reversing it is not necessarily that case, but you understand the meaning of it. You could do something that you can always use from that particular class. So here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to go up here, say at interface, just like how we have always been doing declaring classes. But this interface is actually going to be ns string type, and it doesn't have a superclass, and it doesn't have a column, of course, but it does have two parentheses that stand for the name of the category. And I'm going to call this category reverser. So it's going to be my reverser category of ns string. And of course, I have to implement it. At implementation, what do you want to implement? I want to implement this guy. And then it does whatever it does, and then we'll have to deal with that. So the first thing I should do, I should say I have a method in here that returns ns string that's called reverse it. So this method, whenever we send something to it, it has to reverse it. So I'm going to say ns string is within the implementation as well, and it has an ns string, let's call it res, and return res. Now, obviously, between these two, we have to actually reverse it. And I'm going to talk about that real soon. But before I do that, I want to put my interface and my implementation in separate files. So I'm going to go ahead and say File, New File. And my new file is going to be a Cocoa Touch class of the type ns string, because that's what we are trying to make. And there's a very particular way for naming categories. You don't have to, but it's a very, very common practice. And that is called ns string, and then plus whatever it does. For instance, in this case, it becomes ns string plus reverser. this is my NS strings category that reverses an NS string. So if you find a file outside that somebody else has written and it has this particular format, it has a plus button and then it has some sort of label, it means that it does that thing. So I'm going to say next, and I have it in here, over there perhaps. And then I'm going to copy these two. So that's my NS string reverser, the interface of it. So I'm going to paste it in here. And again, I'm going to cut this one, implementation all the way. I'm going to put it in my .m. Perfect. So that's about that. This is my .h and this is my .m, and of course I can in my .m use it, but we don't really know how it is going to work just yet. So the next thing is we have to write the body of here to do reverse my string. So let's see how we're going to do that. Here is the logic behind it. Let's say I have this very long set of characters. I'm going to say, first of all, find out how many are there. I can't count this, but let's say 25. And then we're going to say, well, if there are 25, get us started from 24th, which is that one, then add the 23rd, which is that one, and then add the 22nd, which is that one, so on and so forth until you reach to whatever is the beginning of it. And that would be essentially the technique I'm going to be using to reverse a string. So let's go ahead and implement that. Since I'm going to be changing this text, I have to change this into an NS mutable string. So it's going to be an NS mutable string, and then I'm going to go ahead and say, well, initialize it, of course, NS mutable string new. Then I have to find out the how long is my character. I'm going to go ahead and say it is an NS integer, and that integer is called, let's say, character length, for instance. All right, or a string length. String length is going to be self, simply because we are within the NS string. So I'm going to say self length. So how long is it? This is, for instance, the one that returns 25 for us. Now I could simply put this inside a for loop. I could go ahead and say, or better yet than a for loop for a situation like this is a while loop. So I'm going to go ahead and say while, and the condition is this: while this guy is still larger than 0. All right, so as we go through it, that we go there, as long as we are here, at least we are 0, you do this. You say, first of all, subtract from yourself, so it becomes 1 less. Imagine in this 25, we are currently landing at, I don't know, somewhere like 17. So we are here on this character. So we have to go and say here, right before W, go for 1 character. And that we do it with something called a range. So here's how we introduce a range. I'm going to say NS range. And in my NS range, I'm going to call it substring range. That's a very good name usually. Substring range is NS make range, and the range we want to make is from here for 1 character. So as you can imagine, it says make a range from 17 for 1, so only this one. So what do you want to do with that? I want to find that character, so I'm going to say NS string, let's call it next character, or actually it makes more sense to call it the previous character. So previous character is going to be self, wherever I am, substring by range, and this range. So I'm going to say here we wanted to find 17 and only 17, just one of them. So now go to self, find that place and put it in something called previous character. I'm going to say res, this one, result, append a string. What do you want to append to it? This one. I want to append to it that one. And that's about that. So now we managed to go through everyone in here, get it, and at the end return that value. So let me clear all of these and just quickly talk about it once again. So what's happening in here is that we have a set of characters. We're going to find out how many they are. Once we found out how many they are, we're going to go from the top, and we're using a while loop. We're going to subtract 1 at the very beginning, simply because, remember, if your string length is 25, the starting point of them is 24. So we first subtract 1 from them, and then we find the range based on that number and one more character. We find that particular character, we add it to our res. Just so that things are going to become a little bit easier, I'm going to go ahead and print this value. You don't really have to do this, but I'm going to say print what do you have at every given time for res. So as if we go through this process, print it for me. Now I have managed to add a new category to an string called reverse it. If I go to main and say import NS string reverse it, I can go in here and say, well, NS string reversed string is hello str reverse it. Now reverse it is actually working just like any function from NS strings because it has been added to NS string. At the implementation level of NS string, there is now a new function. And now I can go in here and say, well, show me what is reverse it. So I'm going to say nslog reversed is, and what is it going to be? It's going to be this. And since I know this guy is printing some random stuff, I'm actually going to push this down a few lines. So I'm going to say go a few lines down. So let's run it now. And now it should do what we expected it to do, hopefully. It should say, okay. So first of all, it says reversed it is the reverse of that, exclamation mark, DL or OW, so on and so forth. And this is the process that it went through. It said the first one, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one, all the way to the end. It found all of them. So that worked the way we expected it. This is how you add categories to Objective-C, which is essentially a way of modularizing our code if that class belongs to us, or a way of adding new functions to our existing classes if we cannot change them. So NS string, NS array, I don't know, a text field, they're all kind of machine classes, and if you want to add functionality to them, we add them using categories. So let's keep it up to here and we'll move on to our next lesson.